So in this video I'm going to look at how to maintain, and I'm going to give you an example of how to plant broad beans. It's one of those crops that are really easy to grow. I don't generally get many problems with broad beans, but there are certain things you can do to try and help to encourage them to be strong and healthy. So that's what we're going to cover in the video today. I'll give you an example of planting of the broad beans and show you a little bit of maintenance for ensuring that you get the very most out of them. So if you like the video, then give it the thumbs up. If you want to see more videos on how to sow and grow fruit and vegetables and how to use them for various recipe ideas, then subscribe to the channel. So when we're planting broad bean seeds, we're looking at planting them between February to May or October to November, depending upon the variety. You don't want to have the soil too waterlogged, and you don't really want it to be too cold. But broad beans are quite hardy, so they will be able to withstand fairly cold temperatures, but for germination you don't want it completely cold. So the way I do it is I will take a broad bean seed, and you can see the broad bean seeds are fairly large. I will then simply prepare the ground beforehand, so this ground will be well dug. Just soften it a little bit, because obviously you want to make sure that the seed has the best chance of germinating. And then the way I do it is I will use my forefinger and just put a hole in the ground like that, and just gently open the hole up a little bit so that it goes to almost like the full length of my finger. Then what I'll do is I'll fill the hole with a little bit of multi-purpose compost. Just put that in there, just a little bit, and just tap that down with my finger again to about halfway. Then I'll put the seed into the hole and just gently press it in, very gently, and then again I'll cover it with multi-purpose compost. And that's it. So that's planting them straight into the ground, and that way you're giving it the best chance of germinating. I'll then give that a sprinkle of water. You'll see a little bit later in the video that all the plants that I've got for this year have all germinated, apart from one or two. In fact, the gap that I'm using here is one of the 3 places in the whole bed that didn't germinate. So this method does work. So these are the broad beans that I've planted this year. There's 2 sowings here. The ones nearest to the camera were sown about a month and a half after the ones at the back. The first ones at the back I put in towards the end of February, which is quite early, but then as I've said, when you're planting the seeds, the broad beans are fairly hardy. So unlike some vegetables, they are able to withstand cold temperatures and more harsher conditions. So I'll go to the ones that I put in first. You can see now that they're almost to the top of the canes. So there's a bit of maintenance to be done with them now to make sure that we get the most broad beans, and also to limit the possibility or reduce the impact of black fly, which seems to happen every year. The variety that I've actually put in this year is something called Bunyard Exhibition, which is a really popular variety of broad beans. With the first sowing of broad beans, you can now start to see that they're actually producing the broad beans themselves. And because they're coming towards the top of the canes, what I'll do now is just nip the tops off them with my thumb and forefinger, just to prevent them growing any higher. And this will do 2 things. One, it will put the energy back into the plant so that the broad beans will be much more likely to be healthier, larger, and probably more of them. And also as well, it reduces the impact of a black fly. I've always found that I always get black fly with broad beans to a certain degree, but you can limit it by taking the tops off. So what we'll do is, if we take this plant over here, you can see here it's growing fairly healthily just at the top of the plant. You can see if I just take my finger and forefinger and thumb, squeeze it and just gently pull that away, then you can see the top that I've taken off. And also if you look into the top of the plant, it's now gone, so therefore that won't grow any further now, but it will make sure that it's healthy. Something that you'll have trouble avoiding with broad beans, in fact a lot of bean varieties, is black fly. And you can see here just the top of this stem here, you can see that's covered in black fly. I've just had a look at the other broad beans and they don't seem to be affected, which is strange, but black fly will spread if you just leave it. So the way to deal with that is to do two things. One is to take off the top of the stems as I've just shown you, which I'm going to do for all the broad bean plants, and the other one is just to get a very diluted, extreme diluted water and washing up liquid to you know, so there's only a little bit of washing up liquid in the dilution, and just spray, and that tends to help as well. But as I said, I can't say any of the years I've grown broad beans I've ever avoided black fly. So it's just it doesn't really affect the beans, because if you look at the actual the bean casings, they're pretty strong and durable, so it doesn't generally impact on the beans themselves, but it's just something that you just need to be aware of and you need to deal with. The final thing I'm going to do today for maintenance of these plants that went in on the second sowing, which is a month and a half after first sowing. You can probably see, which I haven't mentioned yet, they're probably about 12 inches to 18 inches apart. The seed packets will tell you that they should be 18 inches to 24 inches apart, so that's 1.5 to 2 foot. But to be honest with you, I've always grown up this distance and it's never ever caused me a problem. So if you do them a foot apart, they don't generally spread out too far, they just grow high, so they're easy to maintain and control. So what I'll do then now with these is I will tie these up, because they've grown quite a lot since the last time I did this. So if you look at here, I've got a tie on this one as well. So all I'm going to do is I'll take this off and then move it up to about here. So that just supports the top of the broad beans as they grow. And the reason you need to do that is because if it gets windy, they can be damaged and blown over, so they do need supporting in this way. Some people don't support them with canes like I've done. In my case, every single plant has its own cane. Some people tend to, or can, grow them in blocks, so that they will put the canes around the perimeter and then strings in between. And to be honest with you, it doesn't really matter, as long as you're confident that the broad beans are able to be supported, then that's absolutely fine. So finally, when you start to see the broad beans appear on the shoots, my advice is don't pick them immediately. Give them maybe a week or so just to firm up inside. The casings look, you know, quite large, and you would expect there to be the beans in there, but the beans do take a little while just to firm up and to grow larger. So you can pick them tender, and they're very, very nice and tasty. When you first use them, they're quite sweet. But I'm going to get a good crop of broad beans this year, and we'll use them for all sorts of different things. They're good in stews and casseroles and other vegetable dishes. They're pretty versatile, and they also freeze, so they are something that we can keep as well. And what I'll also do is I'll let a number of these plants grow and get some seeds for next year. So I'll just leave the broad beans, or some of the broad beans, on the plant, and when they start to die off and dry, that'll be my broad bean seeds for next year. So that's very easy to do as well.